Hey, real quick. If you want to support the channel for free, check out Audible with my link below and sign up. You get a free trial, I get a little support, and everybody wins. Now, let's get into the story.
My husband won't let me see what he's building in the basement. For months, my husband had been acting strange. He spent every free moment in the basement, hammering, drilling, and moving things around. If I asked about it, he'd brush me off with a quick "it's a surprise" or "you'll see when it's ready." At first, I didn't question it. We had always talked about finishing the basement, maybe turning it into a game room or extra storage space. But as time passed, his secrecy became unsettling. He locked the basement door and started taking the key with him everywhere. He'd get nervous if I even lingered near the door too long. One night, curiosity got the best of me. While he was in the shower, I took his keys from his coat pocket and quietly made my way to the basement. The first thing that hit me was the smell something metallic, mixed with damp earth. I flipped the light switch, and a single bare bulb flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across the room. What I saw made my stomach drop. The basement wasn't a game room. It wasn't for storage. It was a replica, a perfect, uncanny replica of our living room upstairs. The same couch, the same coffee table, the same framed pictures of us. But something was off. The pictures were slightly different. My smile looked forced. My husband's eyes seemed to hollow. And there was a second dining table, one I didn't recognize, with extra chairs set around it. Then I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to turn off the light and close the door. I barely had time to toss the key back in his coat pocket before he stepped out of the bathroom. He looked at me, then at his coat. "Did you go downstairs?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. I forced a laugh. "No, why?" He stared at me for a long time, then finally smiled. "Good, it's not ready yet." That night, I barely slept. The next morning, while he was at work, I called in a locksmith to change every lock in the house. Then, I packed my things and left. I don't know what he was building in the basement. I don't want to know. But I still wonder, who were the extra chairs for? In a bustling city, Emily led a double life. By day, she was the formidable CEO of a leading tech conglomerate, steering innovations and making headlines in the corporate world. By night, she embraced a simpler existence, frequenting local cafes and bookstores in casual attire, relishing anonymity. Emily's husband, Mark, was unaware of her corporate stature. He believed she worked a modest administrative job, a misconception Emily chose not to correct. Mark often belittled her ambitions, dismissing her opinions on business matters and making snide remarks about her limited professional experience. At social gatherings, Mark would boast about his own career, subtly undermining Emily in front of friends. Emily wouldn't understand the complexities of high-stakes business. He'd chuckle, eliciting laughter from those around. One evening, Mark invited his colleagues over for dinner, aiming to impress them. The conversation shifted to a groundbreaking tech merger that had dominated the news. Unaware of Emily's involvement, Mark began criticizing the strategy, labeling the CEO's decisions as amateurish. Emily listened quietly, a slight smile playing on her lips. One of Mark's colleagues, intrigued by Emily's demeanor, asked for her opinion. She offered a concise, insightful analysis that left the room in stunned silence. Days later, Mark's company received an invitation to pitch a project to Emily's firm. Mark was ecstatic, seeing it as a career-defining opportunity. During the meeting, as the boardroom doors opened, Mark's face paled upon seeing Emily at the head of the table, her demeanor confident and authoritative. "Good morning, gentlemen," she greeted, her eyes meeting Mark's with a knowing glint. "Let's discuss your proposal." The realization of Emily's true identity left Mark speechless. The woman he had belittled and underestimated was, in fact, a powerhouse in the industry he so admired. The dynamic of their relationship shifted irrevocably that day. serving as a poignant reminder of the dangers of underestimating those closest to us.
Don't answer the second knock. Daniel never believed in ghosts, curses, or urban legends. He was a skeptic, the kind of guy who rolled his eyes at horror movies and laughed at so-called haunted houses. But that changed the night the knocking started. It was exactly 3:13 a.m. when he first heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at his front door. He lived alone in a quiet apartment complex on the edge of the city. No visitors, no prankster neighbors, just silence until the knocking. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding. Maybe it was a mistake, someone at the wrong door. He waited, listened. Nothing. The next night, the knocking returned. 3 knocks, a long pause, then silence. Daniel finally decided to check. He crept to the door and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no retreating shadows. Just nothing. Then his phone vibrated.
Unknown number. I saw you look. Daniel's stomach turned.
He checked the locks and tried to sleep, but sleep never came. The knocking continued every night at 3:13 a.m. Always 3 knocks, always followed by silence. On the 5th night, he installed a camera above his door, linking it to his phone. That night, when the knocking started, he didn't move. Instead, he grabbed his phone and pulled up the live feed. A figure stood at his doorstep, hooded, motionless, but something was wrong. The knocking continued, and the figure never moved. His phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Don't open the door. Don't answer the second knock. His breath hitched. A second knock. There had never been a second knock. But then it came, faster, angrier. He gripped his phone, staring at the feed. The figure was still outside, still unmoving. The knocks grew louder, and then he realized something. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside his apartment, right behind him.
The silent checkmate. Sarah had always been the perfect wife, supportive, loving, and devoted to her husband, Daniel. They had been married for 10 years. One evening, as she casually scrolled through his laptop for a recipe, she stumbled upon an email thread. At first, she dismissed it as business-related, but as her eyes skimmed through the messages, her heart pounded. The exchanges were intimate, the words too familiar. Daniel was having an affair. She didn't react. No dramatic confrontations. Instead, Sarah closed the laptop, poured herself a glass of wine. She wasn't going to be a victim. She was going to win. Sarah spent the next few weeks playing her role as the oblivious wife. She kissed Daniel goodnight and even packed his lunch like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, she quietly gathered information. She found out who the woman was: Amanda, a younger co-worker from his office. She collected screenshots, emails, and bank statements, storing them safely in a secret folder. Sarah wanted revenge. She wanted to take everything Daniel had taken for granted. One night, as Daniel slept, she copied his signature onto a few key financial documents. Since she had always handled their finances, it was easy to redirect assets to her name without raising suspicion. Then, she hired a private investigator to follow Daniel and Amanda, gathering photographic proof of their affair. Finally, she made sure to befriend Amanda in secret. Using a fake profile, she struck up a conversation online, pretending to be someone else, someone who could expose Daniel's other affairs. Amanda took the bait. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Sarah arranged a romantic dinner at home. Candles, wine, soft music, the perfect scene. She acted as if she had no idea, luring Daniel into a false sense of security. Midway through dinner, she excused herself to grab a surprise. Instead, she returned with a folder full of evidence. She dropped it in front of him. "Happy anniversary, Daniel," she said with a chilling smile. His face paled as he flipped through the damning photos, emails, and bank transactions. He stuttered, trying to explain, but Sarah wasn't done. She handed him divorce papers, already signed, giving her the house, the savings, and full custody of their children. He had unknowingly signed most of his assets over to her weeks ago. Then she played her final move. Amanda walked in. The Silent Checkmate, Part 2. She handed him divorce papers, already signed, giving her the house, the savings, and full custody of their children. He had unknowingly signed most of his assets over to her weeks ago. Then she played her final move. Amanda walked in. Sarah had invited her over, making sure she saw everything. Amanda, now believing Daniel had been cheating on her too, exploded in rage. As Daniel tried to salvage the situation, Sarah calmly grabbed her coat. "You thought you had the upper hand. But you never played chess with me, Daniel. Checkmate." Sarah walked away from the marriage richer, stronger, and free. She moved on, built her own successful business, and lived life on her terms. Meanwhile, Daniel lost everything: his reputation, his money, and the women he played. Sarah didn't just survive the betrayal, she won.
My boss tried to undermine me, so I became his boss. I 32F work in a male-dominated industry finance. When I first joined my company, I was one of the few women in my department. My boss at the time, let's call him Mark, constantly belittled me. He dismissed my ideas in meetings, take credit for my work, and even jokingly say things like, "You sure you can handle this? Finance is a tough game." It pissed me off, but I kept my head down, worked twice as hard, and made sure my results spoke for themselves. Over time, I built strong relationships with clients and helped the company close some major deals. While Mark was busy playing office politics, I was making an actual impact. Then, a huge opportunity opened up: a promotion to senior manager. I applied, fully knowing Mark would try to block me. And he did. He told upper management I wasn't ready and lacked leadership skills. What he didn't know was that my work spoke louder than his words. The clients I worked with directly vouched for me. My colleagues supported me. I had results to back me up. And guess what? I got the promotion. And the best part? A year later, Mark got demoted due to poor performance. Now, he reports to me. The same guy who once told me I wasn't cut out for finance now has to run his ideas through me.
The letter she never sent. Lena had learned to live with the weight of loss. She was 16 when her mother passed away, too young to be an adult, too old to be a child. In an instant, the world that once felt safe became something else entirely. She didn't cry at the funeral. She didn't break down when they lowered the casket. Instead, she held her little brother, Sam, who was only 8 at the time, and promised him everything would be okay. She wasn't sure if she believed it, but she said it anyway. From that moment on, Lena became more than a sister. She became his protector, his parent, his everything. She woke up early to make breakfast before school, took on part-time jobs after class, and stayed up late helping him with homework. She skipped prom to cover rent, turned down a scholarship to keep them together, and worked shifts that left her too exhausted to dream of a future. But through it all, there was one thing she never stopped doing: writing letters to her mother. Every year, on her mother's birthday, she'd sit at their tiny kitchen table, an old notebook in front of her, and pour her heart onto the pages. "Mom, I miss you. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Sam is growing up so fast. I try to be strong for him, but sometimes I just want to hear your voice. Just once." She wrote the words she could never say out loud. When she finished, she'd fold the letter, tuck it into an old showbox beneath her bed, and never look at it again. Years passed. Sam got older. He graduated high school, got accepted into college. Lena smiled and told him how proud she was. But she still worked long hours, still carried the weight of responsibilities no one saw, still wrote the letters she never sent. Then, one night, everything changed. Lena came home late, exhausted from a double shift. As she stepped into her room, she froze. The showbox, the one she had hidden for years, was on her bed. Sam stood beside it, his eyes red.
"I read them," he said softly.
Her heart pounded. All of them. Lena opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Then Sam handed her a letter. Not one of hers, one of his. 4 words.
"You did just fine."
And for the first time in years, Lena cried. Not because she was broken, not because she was tired, but because, after all this time, someone had seen her. Someone new. And for the first time in a long time, she believed it.